sorry, Tema.
Helo dhurita kedaya visadaya pronila damo samyak shastra vivadaya rasadaya chitrarpiton madaya shashwat bhakti vinodaya samadaya madhurya maryadaya Shri Chaitanya Dayanidhe Tavadaya Bhuyadamandodaya Cheto Darpanamarjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairavachandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandambudhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Joy Guru, Joy Nitai, Joy Gaur. Continuing with Sanatan Goswami's Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta, Part 2, halfway through chapter 5, which is called Priyanama. So Narada continues. Bho, Gopakumara, anyhow, my tongue could somehow play his role in narrating these esoteric pastimes of Sri Krishna in Braja, but regarding his further super excellent transcendental pastimes in which we find the zenith of esoteric love, how can I speak adequately of such transcendentalism? No doubt, Sri Krishna is the very many, in his very many other incarnations, showed the mystery of divinity and spiritual excellence. But his pastimes in his own self-some original form, enacted in Braja, are super transcendental and without any contradiction established and proved as glorious and esoteric. Therefore, how can it be practicable to exhaustively speak of the glories of such pastimes? When such glorious words are heard of, or such places where feeling of ecstasy saturates the heart of a devotee, those great ones who have delved deep into the esoteric Leela of Sri Krishna and exercise unbiased philosophical and ontological vision, have proved the super excellent transcendental Leela of Sri Krishna above all other manifestations. They are most fortunate and supremely blessed indeed. Nay, even those who on listening to the divine sports of Sri Krishna are transported with ecstatic feelings and are also blessed. I pay my obeisance to them all, time and again. So said sage Narada. As on Sri Krishna is the fountain source of all other incarnations, and his excellence surmounts all. His flute, becoming his association, is supremely mysterious. My tongue cannot speak of the glories of the flute that remains at the hands of Sri Krishna as the most favorite object of his prankful pastimes. How can I exhaustively hail all the glories of Sri Krishna, as well as his dexterity of amusingly playing on the flute? When he kisses the flute with his blissful lips and puts his delicate fingers into its holes, dancing his eyebrows, his left cheek inclined towards his left arm, the consorts of the siddhas, flying through the air, accompanied by their spouses, are struck with wonder to hear that music of the flute. Soon they find their minds are made a target of the shafts of love. They fall into a trance, forgetful of their skirts loosened and unsettled in that helpless state, Lo, yet I am tempted, and my tongue covetously enchanted by the glories of the flute, by the abounding grace of the Lord. I now hail the magnanimity of the flute, but you, Gopakumara, most carefully listen to it. What a mystery! Lo, the Lord himself, who could not solve through his own narration, not through the Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas, that esoteric aspect of his all-attractive and all-charming characteristic, has unfolded that by his mysterious flute, when it is kissed by his holy lips. Oh, hearing the music of the flute, the consorts of the devatas flying through the air, accompanied by their spouses, blush and find their minds made a target of the shafts of love, fall into a trance. Nay, Indra, Lord Shiva, Brahma, and others, listening to that music of the flute, become infatuated to the sound and unable to penetrate into its subtleties, learned as they are, and may all fall into confusion. They are confused as to whether perception of the supreme reality in their soul's eyes, or the notes of this flute which infatuate into them abruptly as the presiding deity of their hearts. Even the great Munis, at their absorbed meditation, when no idea of world or worldliness can enter into them, but as soon as Sri Krishna plays on his flute, the music thereof pierces through their transparent heart and makes them enchanted with the ecstatic raptures. The moon god, along with his retinue, feels amazed, with the result that he becomes standstill and his progress in the heaven is arrested. Now, how should I hail the super excellent glories of the Gopas of Braja, who solely dedicated their body, mind, and soul, along with their progenies, including their own consorts, to Sri Krishna? Nay, they become quite indifferent to their personal gain, including their attainment of any other spiritual aims here or hereafter, except to that of the sole pleasure of Sri Krishna, their only beloved. Oh, what a glory they saluted in their consorts who imbibed loving devotion to Sri Krishna. How the cowherd boys were devoted to him. Sri Krishna was the very self, and they were the shadow to accompany him constantly. It so happened that out of curiosity to enjoy the serenity of the blossoming beauty of the forest, the Lord just went out of sight of the boys. Even if a tree obstructed a sight of him for just the twinkling of an eye, they became restless, and soon having sight of him, they felt as if they got back their life. So void of Krishna was void of life to them. Go, Gopakumara, be most fervent and listen to the most mysterious acts of the flute. As soon as Sri Krishna kisses the flute with his lips, the notes thereof enrapture the souls of the gopis, including Srimati Radhika, whose paramount super excellent love excels that of his other consorts like Rukmini. It so enraptures them that the moment the notes enter into their ears, those who are waiting upon their husbands turn their back and run. Others who are feeding babies of their sisters leave the babies on the ground weeping and run. Still others who are attending to their personal beautification with costumes and garments run to Sri Krishna with their garments and jewels wrongly placed. Infatuated as they are, having their minds lured away by Sri Krishna, they cannot be stopped by their husbands, parents, brothers, or other relatives. Gopis themselves have said, When playing on his flute, Sri Krishna walks with the gait of an elephant, soothing the pain of the soil of Braja caused by the hoofs of the cattle, by his own tender feet resembling the petals of a lotus. His feet bear the weird marks of a flag, thunderbolt, lotus, and gold. The notes of his flute and his amorous glances infatuate us with passionate love to such an extent that we become stand still like a tree and even forget to cover our womanly beauty with proper dressing as our garments and braids get loosened due to excitement. Being infatuated with such cupidity, the amorous love is like the hot sugar-cane juice. It is sweet to drink, but at the same time, being hot burns the tongue. Further, listen to me about the magic influence of the flute, that even cows, calves, cattle, deer, nay, the non-sentient beings like trees, creepers, and mountains, the running waters of the river, and even the cloud in the sky stand motionless on hearing his flute, drinking with the cup of their ears the nectar-like music of the flute, and hugging Sri Krishna, the cows stand motionless with joyful tears in their eyes. The calves too stop sucking the udders of their mother cows with the draught of milk. Stupid animals like deer perform their worship through their loving glances to him. The rivers appear with their hair standing on end in the form of the blossoming lotuses through rapture, and the running streams stop while the trees shed tears with joy in the shape of dropping flowers full of honey, witnessing the dance of peacocks in rapture to hear the notes of the flute. All other creatures on the summits of Mount Govardhan cease from every activity and stand motionless. Lo, the music of the flute is so exciting that, infatuated by love, the sentiment beings are so much absorbed in that they stand motionless like non-sentient beings, whereas non-sentient beings exhibit responsive loving sentiment, a thing which is not seen in any other sphere. A thrill of joy appears in the stationary beings like trees, etc., and the mountain gets melted. Oh, what a glorious ontological characteristic of this flute is! Even non-sentient beings become rapturous and gave expression to the sentiment of prema on listening to the notes of the flute, whereas the great philosophers are puzzled to realize the super excellence of the transcendental aspect of Sri Krishna, the supreme par excellence, with his own selfsome original, who attained the object of their desire in the form of having their necks encircled by stout arms during the Rasa Leela, which was not the lot of the celestial damsels, possessing the fragrance and splendor of a lotus, nay, even to Sri Lakshmi, the consort of Sri Hari himself, as Sri Narayana in Vaikuntha has given a place on his chest. Even then she could not avail herself of such a favor from him as got by the gopis. This transcendental erotic love sport is the most nectarine one, and indeed all the unfettered souls are naturally allured to the infatuation of this divinely pure cupidity of Sri Krishna. When autumnal full moon lit, beaming upon the water lily, and the breeze blows with the south carrying fragrance of blossoms, Sri Krishna, clothed in blossoming beauty of eternal autumnal love, athirst to steal the unstinted cupid love of Braja gopis, standing under the Vanshivata on the bank of the Jamuna, while Lord of love played on his mystical flute. The mysterious, all-attracting sound of his flute left no Cupid heart of the gopis untouched in dance. They were robbed of their hearts and maddened run unto him like flood water bearing no bar. Bewitched by his music of the flute, characterized by protracted rise and fall of voice, and consisting of melodious pieces, the most virtuous gopis of Braja, enraptured as they were with passionate eroticism, having been lured away by Sri Krishna, they sallied forth from all sides to reach him like waters of rainy season, and at their approach the connoisseur Lord said, "Welcome your presence here, O highly blessed ones. Frightful in aspect is this night, and characterized by the presence of hideous creatures. Therefore return to Braja forthwith and serve your husbands. You should not tarry here, O slender-waisted ones." Hearing the speech of Sri Krishna, their only paramour lover, who was the be-all and end-all to them, and which was so painful and unpleasant, the gopis felt despondent, and finding their designs frustrated, were plunged into deep anxiety. Casting down their faces, with lips cherry as bimber the fruit, ripe bimber fruit, but parched by their breaths with grief, and scratching the ground with their toes, they stood silent under the heavy load of their sorrow, washing the saffron painted on their breasts, the tears mixed with the collyrium of their eyes. What a witty connoisseur our beloved Lord is! He played on his flute purposely to enrapture the unstinted gopi's heart and give them sport with him in amorous sport. But on their arrival, no doubt, the Lord spoke to them as if he had no intention to call them there, and advised them to go back to their homes. But I could praise him if, on hearing the pitiful and lamenting prayer of the gopis, he could compose them, whereas he himself got defeated at their cupidity. Soon, infatuated in amorous love, inflaming the passion of the charming slender-waisted gopis by stretching his arms, embracing them, touching their hands, locks, thighs, skirt, and bosom, cutting jokes with them, and digging the ends of his nails into their limbs, as well as by sportful glances, and with bashful, blissful smiles. Sri Krishna brought delight to the gopis. Oh ho! The Lord suddenly disappeared on that very spot, leaving the gopis in pangs of separation, giving a scope of rising to the zenith of their eroticism, at which the gopis became mad after the search of their only paramour. Ah, who will not cherish in and day out this disappearance of the Lord? The gopis, with their infatuation, felt agonized at his separation, and although they were the very embodiment of tolerance and perseverance, they, with their utter madness, inquired of the trees about Sri Krishna, saying, "O Ashwatha, O Kadamba, where is the darling of Nanda, who has robbed us of our womanly wealth by his amorous glances endowed with smiles?" Nay, they became so much blinded with infatuation that thus, raving with madness, they, identifying themselves with him, imitated his various pastimes. Alas! It is most painful that I feel devoid of competency to unfold his most esoteric pastimes, as he endowed Srimati Radha with the exceptional favour of propitiating her, having stolen her away, to enable her to enjoy alone in secret the nectar of his lips. He even carried her on his shoulder. But again, suddenly, he left her in the forest and disappeared, leaving her alone in the ocean of melancholy to feel the pang of his separation. Again, all the gopis soon joined her and loudly wailed, "O beloved Lord, please reveal yourself and see how your sweethearts are raving and searching for you in all the corners, and we are at a peril. O bestower of enjoyment, set on our bosom your lotus feet, and thereby soothe pangs of love pent up in our hearts. O Lord, vouchsafe to us the nectar of your lips, which heightens our cupidity and destroys all grief. Your flute fully enjoys your lips and makes people forget all their attachments. Your amorous glances, made in secret, kindles cupidity in our hearts, and our mind gets infatuated again and again through intense longing." As they were wailing like this, all on a sudden Sri Krishna appeared amidst the gopis, who at his advent sprang on their feet all at once. Their eyes were wide open with joy, and on their question about love, the Lord confessed his indebtedness to them, unfolding the secret of the gopis' pure love, so saying, "For my sake you have ignored all worldly decorum as well as the Vedas and deserted your own people. I cannot repay my debt to you, whose love for me is absolutely free from blemish, having fixed your mind on me, completely cutting asunder the fetters that bound people to their home and which cannot be easily broken. Therefore let your love to me be repaid by your own goodness. Let that God of love protect you." See the cupidity of the Lord, who commenced duly the festive dance of the rasa, adorned with the circle of those jewelled among women. Lo, he, by dint of his Prabhava Leela, appeared in as many identical forms as there were gopis, and stood between every two gopis with their neck encircled by his arms. At the commencement of the rasa dance, there arose a charming sound produced by the jingling of bangles and anklets and the tinkling of tiny bells attached to the girdles of the gopis. Lord Krishna shone exceedingly bright, due to his sapphire colour being blended with the golden hue of the gopis and with their treads, with the motions of their hands and the playful movements of their eyebrows, accompanied with graceful smiles, bending waists, shaking breasts, with loosened clothes tucked to the nipples and fluttering skirts of their garments, earrings rocking against their cheeks, perspiring faces, and their braids and girdles loosened, and celebrating the Lord in song. The gopis, the sweethearts of Sri Krishna, shone brightly like flashes of lightning in a mass of clouds. Gopis, whose voice was sweetened with love and delightful with the touch of Sri Krishna, sang at the pitch of their voice, filling the whole universe. This rasa dance amazed even the moon god along with his retinue, with the result that the night was extended to an inordinate length. This most wonderful revelation of Sri Krishna in as many forms as there were gopis, and his art of Drupada dance with the gopis, their necks encircled by his arms, embracing them, casting loving glances at them, making unrestrained amorous gestures, and with his garland squeezed by the embraces of the gopis and tinged with the saffron paint of their bosom, the Lord of Love, along with his Cupid lovers, entered into the tranquil waters of Jamuna for further sports. These enchanting pastimes of the Lord enthrall me and captivate my heart. Bravo! One who is fortunate indeed to have covetous taste of succulence of the nectarine bliss that flows from the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. He alone can realize the transcendental paramount esoteric aspect of erotic love of the gopis. Nay, Brahma might have understood about the greatness of spiritual birth at Braja, much more so in Gokula, with the privilege of bathing in the dust of the feet of any of its in the inhabitants of Braja, whose be all and end all in life is Lord Sri Krishna, the dust of whose feet is sought after by the Shrutis even to this day. But to him, even the super excellent glories of the gopis who were the sweethearts of Sri Krishna were not unfolded, whereas this Uddhava, who is present here, alone realized the exceptional fathomless depth of the nectarine ocean of the glories of the gopis' love. Therefore he prayed thus: let me be born even as a creeper in Vrindavan, with the privilege of being consecrated with the dust of the feet of the most blessed gopis, whose ever flooding passionate love cared for nothing but transmuted to the sole delight and pleasure of Sri Krishna, whose feet are still strenuously sought for by the Shrutis. And it was most justified for both of them to covet for the highest pursuit in respect of their respective spiritual sentiment. It is also the fact that as one is imbued with the spiritual covetousness, he can realize the transcendental reality according to his perspective, and he may read the heart of his adherents with their glorious loving sentiments. The gopis, who intoxicatedly and spontaneously drunk the nectar that flows from the lips of Sri Krishna, could glorify the flute, so saying, "Ah, what a meritorious act has the flute performed, by virtue of which it freely enjoys to its heart's content the nectar flowing from the lips of Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna is enthralled by love and love alone. Love and affection of the people of Braja have enthralled him so much that he has got extraordinary, surmounting, loving attachment to them, by dint of which he could not even heed to the panegyrics and obeisances of Brahma, who is the first to emanate from him. Perhaps the people of Braja might have applied some wonderful forest medicinal product to him, that the Lord, who Gostanagar is fond of enjoying erotic love amidst the blossoming autumnal beauty of the forest, is so much infatuated, nay, subjugated by the love and affection of the people of Braja, that we, to whom his lotus feet are the only shelter, are not even graciously welcomed there. Bravo! The prema of that people of Braja possesses for Sri Krishna as a darling of Nandanandana, and although all the while, day in and day out, they have engaged themselves in the loving service of Sri Krishna for his satisfaction alone, yet their loving sentiment is so great that they feel they are not up to the mark and mourn. Really, these people of Braja, who are eternally adherent devotees of Sri Krishna, are indeed to be worshipped by the great philosophers endowed with the ontology of the absolute reality like us. They are far, far praiseworthy than the Yadavas of Dwarka and the inhabitants of Vaikuntha, although they are also eternally adherent devotees of the Lord, and thereby ever enjoy the perennial bliss. Some may establish the theory that Sri Krishna thrilled the people of Braja by his charming sports, but this theory cannot stand. In fact, the Lord became enthralled and infatuated at the selfless, ever pure, supremely charming and affectionate love of theirs. Otherwise, he might not have ignored the mission by killing Kamsa and others, to be reminded of by me as follows. My Lord, You have descended for the protection of the holy ones by annihilating the demons, goblins and ogres born as kings. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Akrura, the well-wisher of Yadavas, went to Braja, and with utmost difficulty he could bring Sri Krishna from Braja to Mathura. Yet it is a fact. Dina, have you found where we're up to?
Dina left the group, unfortunately. He doesn't seem to have come back. Let me just see.
Oh, I'll carry on then.
Yeah, he's not here. He's gone, so unfortunately.
All right. Where was I? Akrura, the well-wisher of Yadavas, went to Braja with utmost difficulty. He could bring Sri Krishna from Braja to Mathura, yet it is a fact that Sri Krishna never left his people of Braja at any time. The Lord himself said, even a footstep I do not go out of Sri Vrindavan. He, in his self-some original form, as Nandanandana, eternally remains at Braja and eternally sports with the gopis. What shall I say? Sri Krishna is the greatest connoisseur. Therefore, the people of Braja are sometimes put in pangs of separation from him for creating high tide in their ocean-like reservoir of love. The depth of that exalted love in separation he himself could not fathom. Therefore, to unfold the hidden treasures of that esoteric aspect of Gopi's loving bosom, he just plays hide and seek, moving from one sportive grove to another grove or of Sri Brindavan, or sometimes in the same grove hiding himself behind the thickest bushes. I came to the conclusion that Sri Krishna, being the most benevolent one to bestow secret gift of his own self to his most beloved people of Braja, gave this best succulent sentiment rasa in love in separation by hiding himself out of their sight. It is the fact that in love in separation, a devotee really becomes more rapturous in enjoying super excellent abounding bliss of the Lord, which brings intoxicated madness, than in love in union. Although such a devotee outwardly exhibits signs of sorrow, but inwardly there flows in his heart a perennial current of that super excellent bliss. We find Sri Uddhava saying, "O highly blessed ones, due to your separation from Sri Krishna, you have developed exclusive devotion to him, which has enabled you to behold him in the zenith of love. Nay, you have conferred a great boon upon me by thus affording me an opportunity to witness your unprecedented love with my own eyes." Eternally, Sri Krishna sports at Braja region on this earth. The same Leela eternally takes place at Goloka too. Therefore, he must know that you must know that there is no distinction of his Leela conducted in both the worlds, viz. At Braja circle as well as at Goloka. In fact, his Braja Mandala is the replica of Goloka only. Therefore, Sri Krishna, the Supreme in his self-some original form, does whatever he has been doing at Goloka at Braja circle also. Although Sri Krishna enacts his Leela in the company of Sri Nanda and their adherents of Braja without any interruption, yet these pastimes of Sri Krishna do not always cross the purview of all, but who is fortunate alone may have a vision of the same at any time. Again, during the end of that particular Dwapara Yuga, he appears publicly, where, as at Goloka, his eternal Leela is ever enjoyed by the devotees who stay there. As Sri Garuda and others, eternally staying at Vaikuntha as the personal devotees of Bhagavan Narayana. Accordingly, Sri Nanda and other dear ones of Bhagavan Sri Krishna eternally stay at Goloka as the Parshada devotees of Sri Krishna. Sri Nanda and other adherents of Sri Krishna at one and the same time eternally exist in both the places, viz. At Braja as well as at Goloka, with their respective role of servitorship to Sri Krishna. The means through which one can reach Sri Goloka alone has to be followed for attaining the transcendental land of Mathura Gokula, also which is the projected Goloka on earth. And then only one may be bestowed with the choicest blessings of the darling of Sri Nanda, and may have the vision of his eternal sports at Braja. Sri Narada further said, Bho, darling Gopakumara, now with your open heart tell me whether you are earnestly craving for visualizing such a most charmingly beatific Leela of Sri Krishna, who treads the holy land of Braja with his lotus feet. Bho, brother, it is a fact which I have come ultimately to this conclusion, that to attain Goloka is practically almost impossible, and the means thereof is equally most difficult. Well, see, generally all beings are lacking in their discriminating faculty to judge between their spiritual good and material gain. Of course, the human beings are having such faculty of discrimination, but very few among them are in the good luck, good track, and have a good disposition. I pity them, for even people of good conduct generally run after the worldly gains, such as wealth and lust. Rarely someone performs some religious rites for gaining the heavenly enjoyments after death. Again, among those people of religious disposition, a few of them are inclined to perform religious rites free from any selfish desire or gain, yet some of them are aspiring after moksha, salvation. They may rise to the state of Paramahansa, or self-abnegation, or self-realization, but among these muktas, self-realized souls, some, fortunately imbued with the Sukriti, may tread the path of devotion to Bhagavan, as it is said in the Bhagavat, living beings in this universe are as numerous as there are particles of dust. Of them, only a few human beings, as a matter of fact, practice virtue. Again, of them, a few are the seekers of moksha, and among thousands of those seekers of moksha, rarely someone truly may be rid of attachment and attain self-realization. Even among tens of millions of those self-realized souls, it may be found that only one is perfectly free from any desire even for salvation. Such a person alone is solely devoted to the feet of Bhagavan Narayana. Further, among those devotees of Bhagavan Narayana, really one may be blessed with loving natural devotion at the feet of Sri Madana Gopala, because devotion to the feet of Sri Krishna in Braja is unalloyed, spontaneous, and causeless, where natural love flows towards him without being influenced by awe and reverence, as in the case of Sri Narayana, the Lord of Majesty in Vaikuntha. Nay, a devotee of Sri Krishna looks upon him not as the Lord, but as his darling one, subjugated to his loving affection. It is the truth that I have got the conviction. So said Narada. Different grades of aspirants get their attainments too, accordingly, as the single-minded devotees are rare, so devotional compositions by them are also very few. No doubt those who are devotedly, lovingly, and affectionately to the lotus feet of Sri Madana Gopala are super excellent devotees, yet in some respect, or rather each of them, is having a varied and distinctive characteristic in respect of their loving sentiment. But I once again should confess my inability to scrutinize their respective sentiments. Sri Gopakumara said, Bho Brahmana, After narrating these stories of Sri Naradaji, these stories, Sri Naradaji humbly held Sri Uddhava into his bosom, and with spiritual perturbations he begged him, Uddhava, to pour into their ears the nectarine bliss of unfolding the treasure of the blossoming love of Sri Krishna's adherents. Sri Uddhava, now being possessed by the ecstatic perturbations, time again, with all possible humility, touched the earth with his bowed head and said, I ever crave for the dust of the feet of the gopis of Braja. Soon he took the name of the gopis. He was completely overpowered with ecstatic rapture, and holding a straw in between his teeth, with great emotion and touching the feet of Sri Narada, he went on saying, let me be born even as a creeper in Vrindavan, with the privilege of being consecrated with the dust of the feet of the most blessed gopis, whose ever-flowing passionate love cared for none, and who even totally abandoned their own people and transgressed even the cords of righteousness, which were practically impossible to bypass, but got transmuted to the sole delight and pleasure of Sri Krishna alone. Once again, having manifestation of all the 8 symptoms of the ecstatic mood in his person, Sri Uddhava jumped out and further said, Bravo! The grace which descended on the gopis of Braja, who attained the object of their desire in the form of having their necks encircled by his stout arms during the Rasa Leela, did not fall to the lot of celestial damsels, possessing the fragrance and splendor of a lotus. Nay, even Sri Lakshmi, the consort of Sri Hari, Sri Narayana in Vaikuntha, who has given her a place on his chest, even she, with all her endeavor and aspiration, could not avail herself of such a favor from Sri Krishna. Sri Narada the Great, noticing the ecstatic mood of Uddhava and penetrating on his utterances, got completely amazed, but observing me, Gopakumara, at a spiritual distress, he gently spoke. Sri Narada said, This crest-jewel devotee, Sri Uddhava, who is the very crown of the Paramahansa devotees of Lord Sri Krishna, when proudly craving for the dust of the feet of the gopis of Braja, wanted to have even a birth of a creeper at Vrindavan, then what should be the glories of their blossoming love, and how can I dare to peep into it? Even as Sri Rukmini Devi, who is known as Haripriya, even she could not possess such a favor as the gopis of Braja had, although she, being a girl of high lineage, neglected the traditional way of wedding, and at the teeth of great opposition from her brother, she wrote to Sri Krishna thus, Having heard of your excellence and of your charming appearance, my mind has gone to you with the craving to behold your lotus feet at my bosom and feel complacent. I do not feel ashamed to say that I have honored you as my husband, and I have surrendered myself at your lotus feet. Let not the jackal defile the quarry of the lion. At her earnest prayer, Sri Krishna accordingly accepted her by fulfilling her desire. Really, her love for Sri Krishna was so great that once, when he was wittingly remarked, Better instead of me, you might have chosen an eminent Kshatriya king who may be a proper match for you and who you can supply all the materials for your gratification both here and hereafter. Hearing these words of Sri Krishna, whom she adored as her only saviour, she was struck with terror and, shuddering at heart and shedding tears with severe agony, fear and grief, she suddenly swooned and fell down on the earth with her dishevelled hairs like a banana tree uprooted by the wind. Then were where do you where do the other queens like Kalindi and Satyabhama stand, leaving aside other less important ones? No doubt they are more venerable than the celestial damsels, possessing all the best qualities of womanly love. Fie unto me! Who am I to delve deep into the fathomless oceanic treasure of Gopi's love, like a dwarf wanting to catch the moon in the sky? Yet my covetous tongue is beyond my control. Therefore, bore Gopakumara, bore the dear one to Brajanatha Sri Krishna. It will be really justified if Sriman Uddhava narrates about their glories, because he is counted as the crest jewel devotee among the Premika devotees of the Lord of Braja, and it is he who deserves the worthiness of tasting the succulence of that sweetness, being the recipient of his kindest favour. As you see, the Lord himself sent him to Braja, and by his grace he could personally witness and realize the ocean-like fathomless depths of the love of the gopis. And the gopis, whose love enthralled the enraptured, the Lord, they also showed their best affection on him, as he himself has said. O highly blessed ones, you have in separation from Sri Krishna developed exclusive devotion, and you have conferred a great boon upon me to witness your unprecedented love with my own eyes. By dint of that, during his stay at Braja, he also forgot Sri Krishna. Therefore, whatever conclusions Sri Uddhava will make in respect of Gopi's characteristics, that will definitely be the very truth, because he personally witnessed and the finest state of the Gopi's love when it reached its zenith. And none need doubt about my this choice. Akrura, the son of Shwapalka, and also an uncle of Sri Krishna, was an agnostic, and his heart was as dry as a stone, and therefore not a bit of mercy he had. Therefore, to the people of Braja, he is known as the cruelest. Moreover, he committed the offence of carrying away Sri Krishna, the very life of Braja, from there to Mathura at the instance of Kamsa, not Sri Kamsa, Kamsa. On his approach to the land of Braja, he noticed on the earth the footprints of Sri Krishna and fell in prostration time and again. With full of tears in his eyes, he glorified the gopis for their greatest and most enviable fortune of having such a most venerable lotus feet of Sri Krishna on their bosom. Yet his cruelty did not take leave of his merciless heart, and he did not give up his idea of carrying away Sri Krishna from Braja to Mathura. Fie unto him! Soon he took away Sri Krishna from Braja for Mathura. Whole Braja became lifeless. Sri Akrura prayed as the lotus feet of Sri Hari are adored by Brahma, Shiva, Sri Lakshmi, and by sages and saints and gods of heaven. With the same gracious feet, he moves about in the pasture land of Braja, along with the cowherd boys tending cattle. Ah, the most fortunate damsels of Braja beheld them to their bosom, therefore the marks of his feet are tinged with the saffron paint of the nipples of the gopis' breasts. Further he prayed, will the Lord place on my head as I am fallen at his feet, his own lotus-like palm that has given assurance of safety to men terrified by the speed of the serpent of time, and who sought shelter at his feet. Placing articles of worship in his palm, Kaushik, the former Indra, attained the rulership of all the three worlds, and King Bali not only secured the sovereignty of the three worlds, but also a most glorified favor. Ah, those lotus palms relieved the fatigue of the gopis of Braja during the rasa sports by their very touch. Sri Bhishma, the grandsire of the Kauravas and Pandavas, and who was a lifelong celibate as well as a strict adherent to Dharma, just before his departure from this world, made his panegyric to Sri Lord Sri Krishna, with a special reference to his glory, to the glories of the women of Braja. And he prayed, this Nanda Nandana, darling of Sri Nanda, Sri Krishna, brought the women of Braja to the highest position of honour by his infatuated association with them, as it were, the gopis, having enjoyed the rasa krida, the sight of his charming gait, graceful union, winsome smiles and amorous glances, and in their mad ecstasy, when suddenly Sri Krishna disappeared from their midst, they imitated some of his sports. Ah, may I have unflinching devotion to the lotus feet of that paramour lover of the gopis of Braja. Leave Bhishma. Nay, when Sri Krishna started on his journey from Hastinapura for Dwarka, the ladies of the royal family, who had riveted their heart on Sri Krishna, began to talk. Lo, friends, what a spiritual rite the wedded queens of Dwarka performed in their previous births, that they, in union with him, constantly drink the nectar from his lips, the very thought of which maddened the women of Braja. Sri Gopakumara said, Bo Brahmana. So saying, Sri Narada held me warmly into his bosom and entered into the world of ecstasy, with tears rolling down his cheeks, severe tremor and horripilation on his person. But time and again he caught hold of his tongue with the pressure in between his teeth, as it were. The tongue was too covetous to feast on the enjoying the bliss thereof by further penetrating upon Gopi's unprecedented love, and began to dance with the manifestation of different ecstatic perturbations on his person. This went on for some time. Then, after composing himself, he looked at me pitifully, and observing my condition, he once again spoke. Sri Narada said, Oh, dear one, so far what I have spoken are the esoteric aspects of the transcendental love. Therefore it must be kept most secretly, particularly where the devotees worship the Lord with all his majesty. At that time the treasure of this prema must not be unfolded. For this reason alone, while we met at Vaikuntha, I could not speak about this esoteric aspect of love. Here, having studied your sentiment and also having met at this cottage of Sri Uddhava, I am tempted to peep into it. Bo, Gopakumara, I swear with the name of Sri Uddhava, yourself and also myself, by living at Dwaraka, the place of majesty, we never can attain Goloka. Nay, even here one cannot practice that sadhana which leads to Goloka. This is not my opinion, but is the very spiritual truth. Therefore you must listen to my advice. There exists Sri Purushottam Dhama, at a short distance from, but an upper realm than the Dwarka of Vaikuntha, this Dwarka. The Purushottama Dhama, you should know, is at a higher plane from the Dwarka Vaikuntha, which is not very far off from Dwarka. The spiritual characteristic is such that the Lord of Purushottama on this earth, whatever blissful leela he does along with Sri Balarama and Sri Subhadra Devi, the same is found in this Purushottam Kshetra about which I just spoke. Not only that, but also all those leelas that he himself conducted at Govardhan, at Vrindavan, and on the bank of the Jamuna, all those esoteric leelas also are eternally manifested at that Purushottam Kshetra. At that Purushottam Kshetra, the Lord in his self-some original form, who is the very source of all other incarnations, has manifested all the esoteric aspects of transcendental beatific leelas of his. The wonderful charm of this realm is that every devotee may visualize the varied leelas of the Lord as per his spiritual context or capacity. Here, everywhere one gets fully liberty to serve his tutelary presiding deity to whom his adoration goes. Ah, the great God feeds the sentiment of the devotees to their contentment in serving him. As Mathura Puri is dear to Sri Krishna, so too this Purushottama Kshetra to him. Although at this place more majesty prevails, yet it is as charming and beautiful as at Mathura to the single-minded devotee. Therefore, better you go to that Purushottam Kshetra and meet the most fascinating Lord Sri Jagannatha Deva. Supposing that on your approach your cherished ambition is not to be fulfilled, yet you should stay over there, and in course of time you will be sufficiently fed with the sentiment to complete your journey, sadhana, in attaining the beloved Lord of your highest pursuit. The Lord who is the very treasure of the gopis' bosom and who is enthralled by their love, such Gopi Jana Vallabha, Sri Krishna, is to be approached following the footsteps of those gopis of Braja. Inculcating their sentiment of love, you better stay at that Purushottam Kshetra. And do remember that even in dream, don't look at to other means, because there is no other alternative sadhana to serve Sri Krishna except following the footsteps of the damsels of Braja. The prema got its true meaning only at the loving sentiment of the people of Braja. This sentiment of Braja prema can be had by dint of his unreserved favour, which in some cases is bestowed all on a sudden, or in some cases by culturing and following the respective ways of life. But in both the cases, Sri Krishna's special grace is accounted as the prime consideration. It may be illustrated as a hungry man getting either cooked food or raw rice with the necessary materials for cooking from a donor. In both the cases, the approacher gets his want fulfilled. Anyhow, the Shastra has advised us to follow the method to imbibe the Braja Prema as subjugating oneself to adhere to the footsteps of the Gopa or Gopis of Braja, and being completely free from awe and reverence, one should passionately relate oneself with Sri Krishna, accepting him as one's unalloyed and inborn spiritual sentiment, in the same way as either a husband or son or someone of that intimate relation, as the Lord himself said, "The devotee who looks upon me as the Lord and upon himself as an inferior being cannot enthrall me, who am enthralled by love and love alone. The maidens who love me most dearly chide me in their sulks. Their reproaches fascinate me more than the hymns of the Vedas." One should have covetous, unalloyable succulence in performing Nama Sankirtana, with depicting the pastimes of Sri Krishna associated with his Braja Leela, especially of these which will be feeding the respective spiritual sentiment of the aspirant. As such, one who has imbibed parenthood loving sentiment, he should sing the glories of Sri Krishna associated with the loving sentiment of Mother Yashoda or Father Nanda. But when one is imbued with the sentiment of consorthood, then he should passionately be interested all the while to perform Nam Sankirtana, depicting the pastimes of Sri Krishna with the gopis of Braja. This is the way to cultivate the Braja Prema. The Prema is most precious treasure for the Parama Bhagavata, who is ever saturated with that loving sentiment. He keeps it most secretly in the core of his heart. But one thing, when he meets a devotee of the same sentiment, and naturally he brings the topic for mutual understanding, but soon esoteric perturbations get manifested on his person, completely enrapturing him and unfolding the very hidden treasure of his heart. Yet it is always good to try them utmost to prevent oneself being exposed. That is why one should live in a lonely place, associated with Sri Krishna's pastimes in Braja, and constantly performing Nama Sankirtan with the feeling of one's own loving sentiment adherent to the associate confidant of Sri Krishna at Braja Leela. Then in no time he will gain the summum bonum of the prema pursuit. This means the cultivating of prema bhakti, quite independent from karma, jnana, and yoga practices. It never depends upon any other practice. It is produced on its own accord. One should see that he feels humble and engages himself in singing and listening to the Braja pastimes of Sri Krishna, which is only the only means. The mystic devotees of the Lord have given characteristic of humbleness as such. Although one is endowed with all the best qualities and possessing highest pitch of loving sentiment, yet in the heart of hearts he feels himself worthless and void of devotion. Therefore the wise and sincere practicant should endeavour to observe this humbleness by all means, with body, mind, and speech, and never should he indulge in its contrary course. This humbleness is the natural outcome of the ripened or matured state of prema pursuit. The very vivid example is found in the brilliantly shining characteristic of the gopis while they were in pangs of separation from their only beloved Sri Krishna, that love in separation is the paramount state, and the humility they expressed thereof is the humbleness true to its sense. As Sri Radhika said, "Oh, the delight of my soul, oh, the Paramore honeymoon, my Cupid love, ah, whose mighty arms are my sole delight, while placed on my bosom. Where are you? Where are you? Be friendly by your very presence before this poor self, your wretched confidant." Again, prema and humbleness have got their relative values, as when one feels himself most insignificant, feeling void of love, then really prema is saturated in him with all its charm. Oh, brother, the ontology of prema is not too far to go. Shall I carry on at all, or do you want me to stop?
Does the Queen speak English? I mean, really, silly question.
Okay, I'll carry on. Bo, brother, the ontology of prema is characteristically known only to a devotee of the same order. It cannot be exposed by other means. Only when one great Bhagavata is enthralled with the enraptured loving sentiment, at that time some ecstatic perturbations get manifest on the person as a sign thereof. Ah, though his heart is overflooded with nectarine bliss, like the current of Yamuna, yet the very characteristic of prema is such that it is like the burning flame of a forest fire. Again, the feeling of love in separation, although it is like the burning flame of a forest fire, yet mysterious characteristic of it is this, that it really becomes the perennial source of nectarine bliss, as it were, like the current of the Jamuna, which is nothing but the cognitive essence itself dissolved into liquid bliss on the full manifestation of prema. It is said, "The liquid current of Gopi's love flowed limpidly in the transparent water of the Jamuna." What a mysterious characteristic prema has! Is poison becomes nectar, and nectar becomes poison. Wanting death is happiness, and again to live further is the very burden of void lamentation. Now he's quoting from Chaitanya Charitamrita, so obviously it wouldn't have been Sanatana Goswami. This rapturous feeling of prema is such, like hot sugar-cane juice which burns the tongue, while taken but so sweet to drink, that a man of taste cannot give it up. And it is enjoyed by him only who is enraptured by that loving sentiment, to whom poison and nectar us the same. Therefore, none can concoct in expression the distinction between love in union and love in separation, because nobody can justifiably say whether this prema is most pleasant or most unpleasant, because in separation there is a greater type of union, and in union there is a great feeling of separation. When a devotee is endowed with the richness of prema, he simply becomes mad after it, and he moves on earth like a madman. Again, without possessing that enrapturing prema, even 9 phases of devotional practices cannot enthrall Sri Mukunda, as we find in the world without in the world. Curry without salt does not give any taste. Sumptuous and palatable food without hunger cannot be relished. Reading the Holy Scripture without any understanding, garden without any flower and fruits, all these are almost good for nothing. Accordingly, void of prema, even performance of ninefold devotional practices cannot enthrall Sri Krishna. Up to this, what I have spoken is about the means of cultivating prema generally found in most ordinary devotees. Even when it is impossible to concoct it in expression, then realize what will be the tremendous, super excellent, magnanimous, esoteric characteristic of the Cupid love of the gopis of Braja towards the darling of Nanda. Therefore, how can I be capable to cogitate its brilliancy and charm? Nay, practically impossible. See, when Sri Krishna was taken away to Mathura from Braja, at the separation from him, the gopis were plunged into an ocean of melancholy and found themselves as fish out of water. Further, better not to question me about this. Really, nobody can cogitate, nay, if at all it is possible to condense it, yet at present you will not be able to conceive it. If by dint of your extremely good luck you may chance to associate yourself with a gopi of Braja, if you accidentally meet the most glorious and most supremely praiseworthy Srimati Radhika, the crown of prema, then alone by her unreserved grace you may be realizing and perceiving prema. She alone can speak about it, but the characteristic of this prema is such that even if there will be an extraordinary person powerful enough to behold it, yet she cannot expose it, because in that case, when spoken, both the exposer as well as the listener soon will be overpowered by ecstasy. Only the alternative is that if Sri Krishna, out of his own kindness, makes his own special graceful manifestation with the sole idea to bestow this prema, or if Srimati Radhika, out of her prerogative of merciful embodiment, takes her incarnation, then only at their very sight the idea of prema can be accomplished. Bho Gopakumara. Therefore, to attain that highest blessedness without any loss of time, you should hasten to Purushottam Kshetra. Really, you are most fortunate indeed. Nay, we are not so favoured by the Lord of Goloka as you are by dint of your birth at Braja. Next, Sri Uddhava, having his exclusive love for the Dwarka Leela of the Lord, said to Narada, Bho, Naradaji, you are revealing the super excellency of Purushottam Kshetra as contrast to this Dwarka. But I know Purushottam Kshetra is dear to Sri Krishna as equally as Dwarkapuri. Just as in Purushottam Kshetra is the prevalence of majesty and human dealings, at Dwarka also is found. Our beloved Lord Sri Krishna has manifested himself as Sri Jagannatha at Purushottam Kshetra for showing his benevolence to the single-minded devotees who all live there. He quietly remains there with showing his abounding mercy. What spiritual merit can be had At Purushottam Kshetra, the same spiritual pursuit is gained at Dwarkapuri. Therefore, there is no distinction between Dwarkapuri and Sri Purushottam Kshetra. To the contrary, if this Gopakumara goes there on observing the Gokula pastimes of the Lord as well as listening to the glorious merit of Brajalila, he will be perturbed and want on his union with his beloved. At that Purushottam Kshetra, no doubt he will enjoy the most blissful sight and brilliancy shining lotus face of Sri Jagannatha. He can partake the Mahaprasadam and enjoy the festivals, but due to unavailability of these chances, he will proudly feel blessed, in which he will be lacking in his feeling of humbleness, which substitutes the great value of prema. Without imbibing the feeling of utmost humbleness or helplessness, one cannot find the charm of Goloka Prema. Feeling helplessness in pang of separation is the true healthy growth of Prema at Goloka. Therefore, the most benevolent Lord Jagannatha Purushottam, who never keeps the wants of his devotees unfulfilled, for the proper maturity of his prema once again will definitely send him to Gokula in the circle of Mathura. So, dear Narada, why you not sending this Gopakumara from here directly to Gokula? There at Gokula he will see those forests, river Jamuna, the Govardhan and other lands of sport associated with Sri Krishna's law, and also their present pitiable condition of the absence of Sri Krishna there. He, Gopakumara, will naturally reciprocate their feelings of helplessness and at the same time become impatient to meet his beloved Lord. These two are the benevolences of Prema treasure that is spoken of by the mystic devotees. At the land of Braja, the great ones always keep a burning feeling of love in separation and cry out, "Where thou art, are pure, poor, helpless, destitute as am I. How can I live without thee? Kindly make thy presence and claim this poor self as thy own." Nay, reciprocating the feeling of gopis in their love in separation, they approach each and everything of Braja and pray, "O great one, Krishna belongs to you. Kindly show him to me. Our void of Krishna is void of life to us." Sri Gopakumara said, "O Brahmana, after penetrating over the utterances of Sri Uddhava, the great minister, Sri Narada most affectionately said, "Bo Uddhava, really you have given good advice. Such a great love and adoration for the people of Braja is possible only by people like you. It shows your unreserved kindness towards this Gopakumara so that he may meet his desired ends early. You know far better than I about the great mysterious glories of Braja, as you stayed there for considerably long period, even leaving aside Sri Krishna." Sri Gopakumara said, "Now Sri Naradaji, who is the great foreteller and observing most auspicious phenomenal events with great joy, further said, Bo Gopakumara, dear to the hero of Braja, soon you will attain the summum bonum of life, no doubt. Oh, the most fortunate one! I know it pretty well since long. The cup of divine bliss got its fullness at this Vaikuntha. This Vaikuntha is the shoreless ocean of bliss. If your stay at Dwarka cannot bring contentment to your most covetous loving sentiment, then in other worlds, including in the heaven, how can there be any solace to you? Now I shall tell you why you feel this void, that is the improper nourishment of your covetous loving sentiment. The cause is that your love is so great which knows no bound. Your loving sentiment is not satisfied with limited service. It wants constant and rapturous enthrallment to behold the beloved with uninterrupted embellishment of all the senses at one and the same time. Otherwise, why, even at Dwarka, one feels something seriously wanting as to saturate one's loving sentiment. This is also the very reason because of which, even at the heaven as well as the Maharloka, even Lord Narayana could not satisfy one's solicitations of prema. But you have inborn loving sentiment towards Brajendra Nandana Krishna. Therefore, in all these worlds you met the Lord, but without having the punctuation for the sentiment of prema, you did not relish it. Your curiosity to observe the glory could not feed your servicing temperament at those worlds. Bo, the most fortunate one. So, for fulfillment of your ever enshrined sentiment, soon approach the transcendental Braja, the land of the thrilling joy. Ah, the transcendental land of Braja has made the earth so glorious and magnanimous. That is the only place for you to cultivate your loving devotion with the least disturbance. The direct spiritual culture to attain Goloka is gained in no time by imbibing the loving sentiment of Braja. This land of Braja is identical with Goloka, which is above the realm of Vaikuntha. Sri Gopakumara said, having drunk the nectarine words of Sri Narada, I felt a burning desire in me to go at once to Braja. But observing me that I was awaiting the permission of the Lord of Dwarka, Sri Uddhava said, Bo Gopakumara, see, when one wants to leave the abode of Sri Krishna for journeying to some other world, one must take his permission. But when you are wanting to go to Braja, which is the most favorite resort of Sri Krishna, then it needs no oral consent of him. Your very idea to resort to Braja itself is a favor from him, because even one getting the chance of serving Sri Krishna personally at Dwarka cannot get so much infatuation of his loving sentiment as he would get by a mere stay at Braja. You know, on that account I lived for a pretty long period at Braja, when I was sent by Sri Krishna to give consolation to the gopis while they were feeling the pangs of love in separation from Sri Krishna. So I strongly feel that our Lord Sri Krishna will know about your covetous desire for resorting to the Goloka here, Braja. He himself may take you there, you being so dear to him. Sri Gopakumara said, Ah, as the nectarine words of Sri Uddhava poured into my ears, I felt some intoxication, and in an ecstatic rapture I closed my eyes for some time. I felt as if I was carried away by someone to another place. Next, as I opened my eyes, I saw myself present at this grove of Braja. Do you want to pause there, Mathura? Because that's the end of the chapter. It's a good place, I think.
Okay, let me just, okay, I'm